Caramoor is the legacy of Walter and Lucy Rosen. They purchased the Caramoor property as a country retreat in 1928 with the intention of building a Venetian-style mansion as a summer home. However, the following year, the Great Depression took hold of the nation and the Rosens set aside their original plan. Instead, from 1929 to 1939, they gradually converted farm buildings on the estate into a home filled with the decorative and fine art objects and complete rooms from Italian palazzos and important manor houses Mr. Rosen acquired during their travels in Europe. The Rosen House is unique in America for both the scope of its decorative art objects and for the 15 complete period rooms from Europe. Walter Rosen was an avid collector. Lucy once said, referring to their collection, "Walter collected all of this, and then he collected me." The collection includes Renaissance paintings, Asian sculpture, jade pieces, tapestries, European furniture, and other decorative pieces. But most of all, the Rosens were deeply connected to music. Walter and Lucy were both accomplished musicians. They built their home to showcase their art and to accommodate their musical evenings with professional musicians and friends. Walter was an accomplished pianist, and Lucy became an expert on the theremin, the very first electronic instrument invented in the late 1920s by Russian scientist Leon Theremin. Lucy became Theremin's student and patron, and by 1935, she made her official New York debut recital in Town Hall. Mrs. Rosen wove the eloquent hands, the magical seeing spell, the New York World Telegram wrote, and the theremin responded to her summons with some of the most strictly musical sounds it has yet produced in our concert rooms. Lucy traveled the world concertizing on this unusual instrument, commissioning many new works written specifically for her. Back at Caramoor, musicales in the music room of the Rosen House were common, and many famous friends of the Rosens were visitors, including pianist Artur Rubinstein, harpsichordist Wanda Lindowska, violinist Zino Francescatti, and conductors Bruno Walter, Fritz Reiner, and Leonard Bernstein. When their only son, Walter Jr., was killed during World War II, the Rosens resolved to preserve the musical heritage of their estate for posterity, and in 1946 they established public concerts under the name Friends of Music of Westchester. Concerts were originally presented in the music room and the Spanish courtyard of the Rosen House. In memory of their son, they decided to preserve Caramoor for future generations as a foundation for music and art, and a summer music festival was soon born. After Walter Rosen died in 1951, Lucy Rosen continued to expand the festival. During the 1950s, Caramoor's popularity continued to grow and a larger concert venue was needed. Lucy decided to make Caramoor available for more of her music-loving friends by creating the Venetian Theatre in 1958. The inaugural concert featured the great contralto Marian Anderson. Performances are still presented in all three venues: the intimate and acoustically exquisite music room, the magical open-air Spanish courtyard, and the acoustically ideal Venetian Theatre. The Rosen House was opened to the public in 1971, 3 years after Lucy Rosen's death. 40 years later, the Rosen House is now undergoing a scholarly re-examination, beginning with the archiving of its historic materials. Caramoor staff and historic consultants are now reviewing the Rosens' written correspondence and records.
We are still discovering many letters, bills of sale, and photos. Sometimes we forget that the Rosens actually lived here. In addition to all the outstanding art and furnishings, the house also contained their personal belongings. The closets were used for storage, just like in any other house. Things were tucked away. We recently opened a cabinet and found Lucy's diaries she wrote as a young girl. They are so moving and sweet and extremely well written, even for an 11-year-old. Another recent discovery were the photos of the period rooms Mr. Rosen purchased from the art dealer Adolf Louis, as he had them in his showroom. Seeing those photos and seeing the rooms installed in the Rosen house, you really understand the massive effort that went into the creation of the Rosen's country home. Just brilliant.
This work is informing how we will want to share the Rosen house with the public in the future. It is so much more than an eclectic house built by an eccentric couple. Each day, our discoveries and deepening understanding of the Rosens gets us closer to finding the home of two very extraordinary people. As it turns out, it's much, much more than just a house.